All right, this is our 2020 Blackwood Canyon Vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon. This is 100% Cab. It gets fermented in almost entirely oak, and it is about half aged in new French oak barrels and a quarter aged in new American oak barrels. So all of the other releases this spring are 2021 vintage. This is a 2020. The reason for that is starting in the 2019 vintage, we started to hold this wine back for a, just got really bright in here. We started to hold this wine back because it was so huge. It is probably one of the biggest Cabernet Sauvignons that we make because it's super concentrated, really tannic. To kind of help balance this wine out, we actually do extended barrel aging on it. So typically we age our wines for about 1.5 years in barrel. This gets almost 2.5 years in barrel, and then an additional year in bottle. It just kind of helps it settle down a little bit. So when we first pour it, for our members at our preview tastings, it kind of opens up a little bit and it kind of shows itself of what it's going to be. But even, especially in this vintage, it's a wine that can probably last, 15 plus years in your cellar. Talking a little bit more about our fermentation techniques that we use for our high-end wines at Varietal. So about half of this is done in our 500-liter roller barrels. Those are, about double the size of a typical barrel. They sit on their sides. The grape must, the skins, the juice come in from the crush pad and go in like a little slit on one side of the barrels. And, it stays in that barrel for about 7 to 10 days. We go through and we roll those twice a day to mix up the fermentations. What we found is that doing it in that method helps us get really intense extraction in the wines, but it doesn't make them overly tannic, which is the kind of a balance that we're always trying to strike. So for this wine, and it's a 24 barrel lot, for those roller barrels, we're only getting about a barrel of finished wine. So even though this is a singular wine, this was probably done in like 13 different fermentations. So we're really trying to do all these different techniques in the cellar to add to the complexity and the texture of the wine. So even though this comes from a single block of Cabernet that was planted in 1984, it's a really complex wine, and some of that comes from that old vine complexity as well. You get really dark, intense fruit aromas on this, like black cherry and blackberry. Really chewy tannins, really long tannins that kind of, last throughout the, entire tasting experience. I'm still feeling that tannin in my mouth, just making it hard to talk. But this wine, I feel like, is a really amazing balance of like that new world fruit and intensity with the old vine, elegance on complexity, kind of like all made into one wine. And it's one of my favorite wines that we make here at Varietal. Cheers.